All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep on NMDC Limited, India's leading iron ore producer.
That's right. The big one.
And you've provided us with a really interesting set of sources here. Their latest earnings call transcript
Oh, yeah.
and their official financial results filing. So we're going to try to put those together
Yeah.
to see if we can figure out what's really going on with their performance, that big growth strategy they've been talking about, and maybe even uncover a few financial surprises along the way. What do you think?
I think that having both the, kind of off the cuff earnings call A and D, the hard numbers, right, from the financial statements, really lets us see the
Huh.
full picture. It's like getting the behind the scenes
Yeah.
and the official story at the same time.
I like that. I like that. Okay, so let's jump into it. The earnings call was really highlighting this record-breaking quarter that NMDC had. Production numbers were through the roof, exceeding even last year's Q4, which is usually their strongest. What do you think is driving this, especially with steel prices being down globally?
Yeah, that's the really interesting thing, right? Because you'd think with steel prices down, that would impact them. But they've actually held their iron ore prices pretty steady,
Hmm.
which suggests that there's really strong demand for their specific ore. Maybe it's the quality, maybe it's the fact that domestic steelmakers really rely on them,
Right.
but it seems like they've got some serious pricing power. Question is, can they keep that up?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? And speaking of ambitious, NMDC also kind of, dropped this bomb
They did.
about this huge plan they have to invest 70,000 crore rupees. I think that's about $8.4 billion
Yeah.
over the next 5 to 6 years to try to hit this production target of 100 million tons of iron ore. That's that's a big jump.
That's a huge, huge signal, right? Not just about their confidence in India's, long-term steel demand,
Yeah.
but that they really want to be a major global player.
Yeah.
So let's try to unpack this massive CapEx plan a little bit. What specifics did we get from the call on the financials?
Well, they talked a lot about boosting their dispatch and loading capacity. So they're talking about using pipelines and rail and conveyors
Mm-hmm.
to move like 1.5 to 2 times their production capacity.
Oh, wow.
It sounds like they've learned from past disruptions. They specifically mentioned a landslide
Oh, yeah.
that impacted deliveries.
Makes sense.
They really want to make sure that their system is resilient.
Right. Right. Because when you're trying to increase production that much, you got to be able to get it out reliably.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And some of these projects they're talking about are still in very early stages. So, those cost estimates we're seeing could change. It'll be interesting to see how that all develops.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on.
hmm They also talked about this pilot plant for processing low-grade iron ore,
Mm-hmm.
which should be up and running by the end of the year. And they're hoping to scale that up to 6 million tons per year. Plus, expansions at Deposit 5 and Deposit 14. They think those are going to get approvals soon. So lots of moving pieces
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
in this plan.
Absolutely. We'll have to watch for, updates on those key projects as they make announcements for sure. But there's one kind of potential problem we should talk about.
Yep.
That tax situation in Karnataka. Because NMDC has a lot of operations there.
Yeah.
And this new bill could really cause some headaches.
Right. So this bill has been passed,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still waiting for the governor's approval. And if it does go through, NMDC is estimating a potential liability of 13,510.90 crore rupees, which is, a pretty significant retrospective tax hit. And there's a chance that royalty rates could go up going forward, too.
It's a tricky one, right? Because they're saying, oh, we can recover most of that from our customers
Right.
through these agreements we have. But even they admit that it could disrupt the market and impact their dispatches.
So
So it's a big question mark hanging over their plants.
yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and look at NMDC's overall financial health, both the earnings call and the financial statements. Give us some interesting things to look at there.
Yeah, for sure. So their cash balance as of January 31st was pretty healthy, 7,696 crore rupees.
Yeah.
But there are these two pretty massive outstanding receivables that were flagged in both the call and the statements. One is from Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, RANL,
Right.
for 3,428.50 crore rupees.
And RINL's in the middle of that government-led restructuring,
Right, which might explain that.
which could be why.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But the other receivable that really caught my eye
Yeah.
is the one from NMDC's own newly demerged steel-making subsidiary, NMDC Steel Limited, NSL.
Right. Right.
That's a whopping 3,277.98 crore rupees. So is NMDC essentially like financing their own subsidiary here?
It does seem that way, and
Yeah.
that's going to be an interesting dynamic to watch, especially with all these other investments they have planned. Now, the notes to the financial statements do suggest that they're confident they'll recover it as NSL's operations ramp up.
Right.
But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. This whole NMDC steel venture is a pretty big step for them. You know, they're moving from just being a supplier of iron ore to actually competing in the steel market.
It is. It is. It's a bold move to enter a whole new market,
Yeah.
especially given the global steel industry right now.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not just, dipping their toes in the water. They're really jumping in with both feet. But it sounds like from the earnings call that they're running into some growing pains. They said they're hitting production targets, but sales are lagging behind.
Yeah.
Because of a shortage of rail rakes to transport the steel. Talk about a bottleneck.
It's a classic example of how real world logistics can really mess up even the best laid plans.
Yeah.
But to their credit, NMDC seems to be taking it in stride. They're looking for solutions, and they're still confident that NSL can break even in the first quarter of next fiscal year.
Yeah.
So it's a real test of their ability to adapt.
It is. It is. But, what about the financial side of this relationship with their steel subsidiary? We talked about that big receivable, over 3,277 crore rupees that NMDC is carrying from NSL. It seems like they're really bankrolling their new, offspring here, so to speak.
It's definitely something to watch. It's not unheard of for parent companies to help out new subsidiaries, especially in an industry like steelmaking that requires a lot of capital up front.
Right. But given their, ambitious growth plans and all the other projects they're funding, it does raise questions about, how much financial flexibility they really have.
Exactly. It's like they're juggling, all these spinning plates.
Yeah, good analogy. And the notes to the financial statements do say that they're confident they'll get that money back as NSL's operations ramp up.
Right.
But yeah, with so much writing on this venture, it's definitely something investors are going to be watching really closely.
Okay, so we've got this potential tax issue in Karnataka.
Uh-huh.
We've got this steel subsidiary that's facing some logistical issues.
Yeah.
And this massive CapEx program that's, really just getting started. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But on the other hand, they've got, record-breaking production.
Yeah.
And they're clearly shooting for global leadership. So where does this leave our listener who's been, following along with NMDC's story? What do you think? Well, I think it's a story of ambition and challenges and a lot of uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
NMDC is making a really big bet on the future of Indian steel.
Mm.
They're investing a ton. They're pushing technological boundaries. They're moving into new markets.
Right.
But they're also, navigating a very complex landscape with a lot of potential problems and risks.
Yeah. So it's not a sure thing. It's a pretty fascinating game to be watching.
Exactly. It's high stakes, and we're just starting to see, how it's all going to play out.
All right, so let's dive into this CapEx plan a little bit more. What are some of the key projects that they're really focusing on besides the dispatch capacity that we already talked about?
Well, that 70,000 crore rupee figure we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
To put that in perspective, their current CapEx spending is only about 4,000 crore rupees annually. So they're planning to really ramp things up.
Oh, wow.
And one of the key areas is this this process of beneficiating low-grade iron ore. They're setting up this pilot plant to process 2 million tons per year initially,
Mm-hmm.
and then potentially scale that up to 6 million.
So they're trying to get more value out of those lower grade ores.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah. This technology could really be a game changer, potentially unlocking value from deposits that they couldn't, really use economically before.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
So what else is on the CapEx agenda?
Well, expansions at Deposit 5 and Deposit 14 are really high on the list.
Okay.
Deposit 5 is expected to add another 2 million tons of capacity,
Hmm.
and Deposit 14 is slated for pretty significant expansion as well.
So it sounds like these projects are really laying the groundwork for reaching that ambitious 100 million ton goal.
They definitely are, but keep in mind these are just the projects they've publicly discussed so far.
Right.
With a CapEx program this massive, there are bound to be other things in the pipeline that we'll hear about down the line.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see what other surprises they have up their sleeves.
Exactly.
But for now, let's zoom in on a specific part of their strategy, that new steel subsidiary, NMDC Steel Limited, NSL. This seems like a whole new ball game for them.
It is.
Yeah.
Going from being a supplier to a competitor
Right.
in the steel market, that's a broad move,
It is.
especially right now.
Yeah. And they're not just, dipping their toes in the water. They're really going all in on this.
Yeah, they are.
But from the earnings call, it sounds like they're facing some growing pains. They mention hitting production targets, but sales are lagging behind because of this shortage of rail rakes for transport.
Oh, wow.
It's like a major bottleneck.
Yeah, it's another great example of how, real world logistics can just throw everything off.
Right.
But to their credit, they're not giving up. They're actively looking for solutions, and they still think that NSL can break even in the first quarter of next fiscal year.
Yeah.
It's a real test of their
Yeah.
flexibility, their ability to adjust.
Right. But what about the financial side of it? I'm curious about this relationship between NMDC and their steel subsidiary. And we talked about that big receivable over 3,277 crore rupees
Yeah.
that NMDC is carrying from NSL. It's like they're bankrolling their own baby, so to speak.
It's definitely a dynamic to watch. It's not unheard of for parent companies
Right.
to support new subsidiaries, especially in a capital intensive industry like steelmaking.
Right.
But given NMDC's grand ambitions and all these other projects, it does raise questions about how much financial wiggle room they have.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're
Right.
juggling, they're juggling chainsaws, it feels like sometimes.
Right. It's a lot.
And the notes to the financial statements do say that NMDC is confident they'll recover the money as NSL's operations ramp up.
Right.
But with so much riding on this venture, it's definitely something investors are going to be watching closely.
For sure. For sure.
Okay, so we've got this potential tax issue in Karnataka. We've got a steel subsidiary that's facing these logistical challenges. And we've got this huge CapEx program.
It's just getting started.
It's just getting started. So much to digest here. But we also have, record-breaking production.
That's right.
And a company that's clearly aiming for global leadership.
Yeah.
So where does this leave our listener who's been, diligently following along with NMDC's story?
Well, I think it's a story of ambition and challenges and a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
I mean, NMDC is making this huge bet on the future of Indian steel, right?
Right.
They're investing heavily. They're pushing technological boundaries. They're expanding into new markets.
Mhm.
But they're also trying to navigate this really complex landscape
Yeah.
with a lot of potential roadblocks and risks.
Yeah.
It's not a guaranteed win, but it's a pretty fascinating game to watch, I'd say.
Yeah, it is. It is high stakes, and we're just starting to see how it's all going to play out.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's break down this CapEx plan a little bit further.
Okay.
What are some of the key projects that they're focusing on besides the dispatch capacity that we already talked about?
Well, remember that 70,000 crore rupee figure?
Mm-hmm.
Their current CapEx is only about 4,000 crore rupees annually. So they're planning to really crank things up.
Wow.
And one of the key areas is beneficiating low-grade iron ore.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
setting up this pilot plant, to process 2 million tons per year initially,
Right.
with the potential to scale up to 6 million.
So they're trying to get more value out of those lower grade ores.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
This technology could be like a game changer.
Yeah.
Potentially unlocking value from deposits that weren't really economical before.
That's a clever move.
Yeah.
It is. What else is on the CapEx agenda?
Well, expansions at Deposit 5 and Deposit 14 are high on the list.
Okay.
Deposit 5 is expected to add another 2 million tons of capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and Deposit 14 is slated for a pretty big expansion as well.
So it sounds like these projects are really laying the groundwork to reach that ambitious 100 million ton goal.
They definitely are. But these are just the projects they've talked about publicly, right?
Right, right.
I mean, with a CapEx program this big, there are bound to be other initiatives that we'll hear about, down the line.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see what other cards they have up their sleeves.
Exactly.
But for now, let's zoom in on a specific part of their strategy. That new steel subsidiary, NMDC Steel Limited, NSL.
Right.
This seems like a whole new ball game for them.
It is. Moving from being a supplier
Yeah.
to a competitor in the steel market that's a bold move, especially now.
Yeah, and they're not just, dipping their toes in the water. They're diving in headfirst with this.
They are, yeah.
But from the sounds of the earnings call, they're facing some growing pains. They mentioned hitting production targets, but sales are lagging behind because of a shortage of rail rakes to transport the steel. Talk about a bottleneck.
It's another perfect example of how real-world logistics can just derail even the best laid plans, right?
Right.
But to their credit, they're not backing down. They're looking for solutions.
Right.
They still believe NSL can break even in the first quarter of next fiscal year. So it's a real testament to their agility.
Right. Yeah. But what about the financials? I'm curious about the relationship between NMDC and this steel subsidiary. Remember that big receivable over 3,277 crore rupees that NMDC is carrying from NSL?
Yeah.
It seems like they're bankrolling their own, offspring, so to speak. It's a dynamic to watch, for sure. It's not unheard of for parent companies to support new subsidiaries, especially in a capital-intensive industry like steelmaking.
Right.
But given NMDC's ambitious growth plans and all the other projects they're funding, it does raise questions about how much financial wiggle room they really have.
Exactly. It's like they're juggling multiple spinning plates at once.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
And the notes to the financial statements do indicate that NMDC is confident they'll recover the money as NSL's operations ramp up.
Right.
But with so much riding on this venture, it's definitely something investors will be keeping a close eye on.
For sure.
Okay, so we've got this potential tax issue in Karnataka, a steel subsidiary facing logistical challenges, and a massive CapEx program that's just getting started.
It's a lot to digest.
It's a lot to digest. But we also have record-breaking production and a company that's clearly aiming for global leadership.
Right.
So where does this leave our listener who's been diligently following NMDC's story? Well, it's a story of ambition, challenges, and uncertainty. NMDC is making a big bet on the future of Indian steel.
Right.
They're investing heavily, they're pushing boundaries, they're expanding into new markets. But they're also navigating a complex landscape with potential roadblocks and risks. It's not a guaranteed win, but it's a fascinating game to watch.
Yeah, it is. It's high stakes, and we're just starting to see how it's all going to play out.
We are.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
We've talked about NMDC's record-breaking production, their ambitious 100 million ton goal, the enormous CapEx program that's fueling their growth, and some of the hurdles they face along the way.
Right.
We've delved into that intriguing steel subsidiary, the potential tax issues in Karnataka, and the financial implications of it all. We've analyzed both the casual conversations from the earnings call and the meticulously crafted details of the financial statements. This has been a true deep dive into the world of NMDC. But as always, we encourage our listener to continue exploring NMDC's story.
Absolutely. There's always more to learn, more insights to uncover, and more developments to watch.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought-provoking question. NMDC is making a massive wager on the future of Indian steel. Do you think their 100 million ton vision will become reality? And what ripple effects could that have on the global iron ore market?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is.
NMDC isn't just riding the wave of India's economic growth. They're actively trying to shape it.
Yeah. It's an exciting time to be watching the Indian steel industry, and NMDC is right at the center of it all.
Absolutely. Thanks for guiding us through this deep dive. I feel like we've unearthed some valuable insights into NMDC's strategy and the larger trends shaping the iron ore market.
And to our listener, we encourage you to keep digging, keep questioning, and keep exploring. The world of business is full of fascinating stories waiting to be uncovered.
It is.
We'll be back with another deep dive soon to help you navigate those stories. Until then, happy listening.
See you next time.
Yeah, it's a bold vision, and with their track record of, kind of beating the odds, who knows, maybe they'll pull it off. But even if they don't hit that exact number, the ripple effects of what they're trying to do are going to be felt, all over the place.
Right.
If
Yeah.
if they're successful, or even if they just, really go after this goal aggressively,
Yeah.
it could have a huge impact on global iron ore prices.
Yeah.
Especially as they, try to compete more on an international scale.
Right.
It could even shift the balance of power in the industry.
It's like they're throwing down the gauntlet, to the other big players. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we're here.
Yeah.
And we're coming for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So what should our listener be watching for as this story, continues to unfold?
Mm-hmm.
What are the key indicators of, success or failure for NMDC's for their grand plan here?
Well, I think keeping an eye on those key projects we talked about is crucial.
Right.
How those expansions are progressing, how that pilot plant for beneficiating low-grade ore is doing, and whether they can overcome those logistical hurdles.
Right.
Those are going to be really telling signs.
Yeah. And what about that tax situation in Karnataka?
Oh, yeah.
If that bill gets the governor's nod, that could really throw a wrench in their plans.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a big wild card that could have a major impact on their bottom line.
Yeah.
Even if they think they can pass most of the cost on to customers.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the performance of their steel subsidiary, NSL, can they get past those logistical problems, ramp up sales, and hit that break-even target they've set?
So many moving parts here.
Yeah.
So much at stake.
There is.
But that's the beauty of business, right? It's always this dynamic, ever-evolving story with, twists and turns along the way.
It keeps things interesting. And it's a good reminder that even the most, detailed analysis can only tell us so much.
Right.
We'll have to see how NMDC navigates the challenges and takes advantage of the opportunities that come up,
Absolutely. Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into NMDC Limited.
We have.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yeah.
Hopefully you feel, a little bit more informed about their ambitious plans, the potential roadblocks they face, and the larger forces at play in the global iron ore market.
It's been a pleasure, kind of unpacking this complex story with you.
Oh,
likewise.
Yeah.
And to our listener, we encourage you to continue your own exploration,
Yes.
Dig deeper, ask questions, and stay curious,
Absolutely.
There's always more to learn.
Always.
Until next time, happy listening.
See you next time.
It is a lot of things to keep track of, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got, this massive CapEx program, right? That's just getting started.
Yeah. So much to digest, right? But then we also have this, record-breaking production
Right.
in a company that is very clearly aiming for global leadership,
So where does this leave our listener,
Right.
who's been diligently following NMDC's story?
Well, I think it's a story of ambition and challenges and a lot of uncertainty,
Yeah.
NMDC is placing this big bet on the future of Indian steel. They're investing a ton, they're pushing boundaries, they're expanding into new markets, but they're also, navigating a very complex landscape with a lot of potential problems and risks. It's not a guaranteed win, but it's definitely a fascinating game to watch.
Yeah, it is. It's high stakes, and we're just starting to see how it's all going to play out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today.
Yeah, we have.
We've talked about NMDC's record-breaking production, their ambitious 100 million ton goal, the enormous CapEx program that's fueling their growth, and some of the hurdles that they're facing along the way.
Right.
We delved into that intriguing steel subsidiary, the potential tax issues in Karnataka, and the financial implications of it all, right?
For sure.
We've analyzed both the casual conversations from the earnings call and the the meticulously crafted details of the financial statements.
Yeah.
This has been a true deep dive into the world of NMDC.
It has.
But as always, we encourage our listener to continue exploring NMDC's story.
Oh, absolutely.
There's always more to learn,
Always, yeah.
more insights to uncover, and more developments to watch.
For sure.
Now, before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listener with one final thought-provoking question, okay?
Okay.
NMDC is making this massive wager on the future of Indian steel.
Uh-huh.
Do you think their 100 million ton vision will become a reality? And what ripple effects could that have on the global iron ore market?
It's a question worth pondering,
Yeah.
NMDC isn't just riding the wave of India's economic growth.
Right.
They're really actively trying to shape it.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be watching the Indian steel industry.
It is.
And NMDC is right at the center of it all.
Absolutely.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into NMDC Limited. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yes, thank you.
Hopefully you feel, a bit more informed about their ambitious plans, the potential roadblocks they face, and the larger forces at play in the global iron ore market.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure unpacking this complex story with you.
Likewise. And to our listener, we encourage you to continue your own exploration, dig deeper, ask questions, and stay curious. There's always more to learn.
Always.
Until next time, happy listening.
See you next time.